All right, man. 2 truths and a lie.
Oh, right off the bat.
Right off the bat. What do you got?
Try to stump us.
All right, I wrote them down, so just a second.
See, that's a recruiter.
All right.
Hang on a second.
So, the first one, I visit Mexico yearly. Number 2, I was in a metal band. And number 3, the Mean Girls is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, the lie is Mean Girls.
That one's true.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right, so
I love
Okay,
that
so the
movie.
metal band.
Yeah, that one's true too.
What?
Yeah. So,
All right, we're going to have to talk about that for a second.
I just pegged, like, he's got the arm sleeve, you know? I was like,
Okay.
oh, come on, the metal band's got to be true.
it is true. Yeah, during high school, a bunch of friends and I was in band during high school, played the drums. So first trimester was like marching band. So the big bass drum was what I started with, and then worked my way up to the marching snare and stuff, and did that. And then, yeah, a bunch of friends and we were super into, hardcore and metal music during high school. And I mean, I still am to this day, but we got together and it was just something that we did outside of school. And there was another group of kids in band with us that had a punk band, and so we would put on little shows after like basketball games and stuff like that during the second trimester of school. And I remember one time, actually, there was a elementary school down the street from where I lived, and we tried to go play out on the playground there and hooked up all of our stuff and started playing, and then the police showed up and told us that we should probably leave. So my mom got involved and said, well, why can't they do it? Our taxes pay, blah, blah, blah. But they were like, look, it's like disturbing the peace. They should probably go. So we went out to one of our friends' houses out in the country and played out there instead.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What was your band name?
I think the last one we had, it was Altazimuth. I honestly don't even know what it is or what it means, but that's what it was called. So...
Did you play locally? Did you do competitions or anything? Like
No.
Battle of the Bands?
We just did a couple of shows at a few different places throughout the area. So I grew up in Jerome.
Nice.
So we played in and around Jerome. However, for band, we had a drum line. And I mean, I don't like to toot my own horn, but we were really good. And we played lots of different cadences and stuff like that as a group. And Twin Falls was one of our rival schools, and they had a drum line as well. So during one basketball game, we all got together, and we had us on one side of the court and them on the other side of the court. And if you've ever seen the movie Drumline,
Yeah.
it was very similar. Had like a little battle, and I mean, we obviously won, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was several other, I mean, yes, they had their own drum line, but there were several individuals in Jerome and Twin Falls. I mean, we played for everything. I remember playing for the opening of a library. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, our band teacher would get us together and be like, okay, you guys have this on this date, and we'd be like, cool, we'll be there. So it was a lot of fun. We had a good time with it. We enjoyed it. We'd go practice during our band hour that we had. We'd usually end up in the auditorium, and they have the big cheerleading mats, and we'd get inside of them and roll them at each other. We'd practice our cadences for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then we would screw around for the rest of the time. But we were always sharp when everything that in our practices, made sure that we could play everything correctly in our little stick movements and stuff like that. But we had a lot of fun with it.
How fun.
So, yeah.
So what did you, like, make your own music, or...
In the metal band, yeah. With the drum line, we kind of followed some that we had seen. I think there was one or two that from drumline that we played, but then we had some guy, I think he was from Washington, that came and showed us a couple different ones that he had played with a drumline that he was in, and he showed us a few things here and there, and we kind of took from that and used those in some of the stuff that we wanted to do. But then we had a couple that we kind of came up with ourselves and used those, but most of them were ones that had been used previously. We just kind of added our own little flair to it. But the metal band was all stuff that we came up with, and we would spend late nights out at our buddy's house, whose parents were usually gone, so that they didn't mind the noise. And it was out in the country, so all we were bothering was cows.
Good morning. It's season 3 of GI and a Cup of Joe. Thank you all for making seasons 1 and 2 a huge success. Again, I'm your co-host, Annie T.
And I am Justin C. It's pretty badass to hear all these stories of how everyday regular people with everyday regular struggles took a chance to better themselves with the opportunities in the Idaho Army National Guard.
And they didn't just do it for themselves, they did it for their families, future, past, and present. Officially, I'm Sergeant First Class Annie Torres.
And I am Command Sergeant Major Justin Cole. We encourage everyone listening to dress right dress.
Which is like, share, and subscribe.
Enjoy Season 3. Today, we are talking to officially Staff Sergeant AJ Hernandez, but honestly, he's just AJ. So let's go back to high school. You talked a little bit about it, but where did you attend high school and what kind of student were you?
I went to Jerome High School for all 4 years. I was a good student, A's and B's for the most part. I think I might have gotten a C here and there probably in math. Math has never been my strong suit, but I seemed to do well enough to get by, particularly when it came to taking the ASVAB to get into the military. That was the main thing I was worried about. So I got the ASVAB for Dummies book and read through that a couple of times and did some of the practice problems and ended up getting the score I needed to do what I wanted to do. So,
right.
And it's benefited me to this point. So, yeah. But
aside from band, what did you enjoy in high school? Like what subjects?
I seem to do fairly well with like English. I do like to read. I don't read as often as I did in high school, but reading came very easily to me. So I like to read, but I've noticed, especially over the last few years, that it's got to be a book that it's something I'm interested in. If I'm not interested in it, then I'm putting that book down and I probably won't touch it again. So,
okay, what book interests do you have?
So
sci-fi, horror.
Lately, it's been a lot of books from like former veterans that have served previously or are currently serving. So I think one of the last ones I read was Scars and Stripes by Tim Kennedy. He's a special forces guy down in the Texas National Guard, fought MMA for a long time. And so just a super cool dude. And I really enjoyed reading his book and getting to see his life, kind of like we're talking about, like his life from, high school up to where he's at now as a master sergeant in the Texas National Guard. So he's a cool guy, but that was the last one I read, I think.
Do you have any special teachers that stood out to you?
There was one that I think she was our English teacher, and a lot of people had an issue with her because they thought she was mean. But I think she was just very focused on helping us be successful. And she was also my tennis coach. So when I had her class, it was kind of a double whammy. So if I was at tennis practice and I didn't have an assignment turned in, then I was hearing about it there, as well as running some laps, probably because I hadn't turned in an assignment. So, but yeah, she definitely, Mrs. Tilquist, if I remember correctly, and she definitely sticks out in my mind as one of those teachers that, like I said, a lot of people had an issue with, but I think it's because she had that drive to make sure that her students succeeded. So she definitely sticks out.
Somebody else in tennis practice.
Right?
Yeah.
Sports?
I always joke about it, but so tennis ended up being the only sport that I did during high school as far as trying out for it and going for it. Basketball and football, I played with friends. I'd go play church ball during the winter with a bunch of people I went to church with and other people that I didn't. One could argue that church ball got violent very quickly.
So ironic.
I always joke that I joined tennis, 1, to get out of school, and 2, for the girls. And so,
That's fair.
And it worked on both accounts. So
Good for you, dude.
yeah.
So thinking back to your senior year, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know if I really knew at that point. So growing up, I came from a Latter-day Saint household. So I knew that once I turned 19, I was going to be going on my mission for the church. So when I graduated, I went to, I think it was a semester, maybe 2, at College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls, just to get some generals out of the way, because I knew that I was young when I graduated. I was still 17 when I graduated, turned 18 that summer. So I still had a year before I could leave. So I took a couple semesters, and then when the time came, I left on my mission, and I was gone from August of 2008 to August of 2010. Wow. And I spent that time, about 18 months of it, in the northwestern portion of England, and then about 6 months on the northern coast of Wales.
That's a cool place.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I really enjoyed my time over there. In a lot of ways, I think it's kind of given me some special, help, I guess, in doing what I do now as a recruiter. I mean, you hear about the Mormon missionaries going around all the time, knocking on doors and talking to everybody in the street. And that's what I did for 2 years. And so now it's kind of easier for me to just approach people and talk about
You have
something.
that mindset already
Yeah.
of what you need to do.
Yeah. And I mean, even that summer after I got back, we were talking about it with some friends last night, but I went and sold pest control for the summer because I was so used to being in that, I guess, sales mindset.
Sure.
And so I did that for a summer as soon as I got back, and I never did it again, but it was a interesting experience.
You're in New England, or England, right?
Yeah.
England,
In
yeah.
Wales, right? What is something that we believe, Americans believe about England, that you got over there and were like, oh, this is totally not a thing?
So I remember one day, it was fairly early on. I think it was month 6 or something like that. And I know we obviously like notice their accent, but I just never considered that, our American accent is very overpowering. And I remember talking to somebody at their door and they're like, oh, wait, you're American. And I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? And they're like, well, it's pretty obvious. And I'm like, oh, I guess. So I didn't think about that. But one of the things that I found out was the meals that I had in particular were very bland. And I think that that's something that's fairly well known. But I found that out on a regular basis. So very, very bland dishes, but still very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all about the bland. I can't do spice. So.
And speaking of that, there was a lot of Africans that were over in that area, trying to get out of Africa and just kind of have a better place to live. And we met a lot of them, and they ate, I can't remember what the dish was called. I think they called it fufu, but it was some weird like dough balls. And then they had Scotch bonnet chili peppers that they would put in it, and they were crazy. And
Wow.
I remember a few of us got together one night and we cut it into fourths, and each of us ate one. And I mean, that's the hottest thing I've ever had in my entire life. And milkshakes, whatever, nothing helped.
Nothing.
You just had
Wow.
to sit there and ride it out for 25 minutes. And
25 minutes.
Oh my God.
and it gave me a headache afterwards. And
Okay.
yeah, I'll never do that again.
And then once it was down, did it come back?
I think it was okay.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't nearly as violent as
Yeah.
one would expect, but yeah, it was rough
So many bad visions in my
during
head.
the time being.
So
Yeah.
Taco Bell's worse, really.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Did you ever see the Queen or meet the Queen?
No.
Oh, man.
Nope. I was up in the northwestern portion of the country, and
Oh, okay.
so London's a little bit further
Yeah.
south, and so never got down that way. But
What influenced you to join the Idaho Army National Guard?
great question. So I got done with my mission, and I get back, and I think I went to another semester at Boise State, and then I ended up getting married, going through, and I just kind of decided, college isn't for me. I don't want to continue paying for it if I don't know what I want to do. And so I ended up leaving after that semester and started working for a landscaping company. So from that point until I joined the Guard, I was mowing lawns, doing landscaping, stuff like that. And I got to a point where I decided, I either need to start my own company and start doing my own thing because I don't want to work for somebody else for the rest of my life doing this, or I need to figure something else out. Also, I was getting ready to turn 26 years old. And for those who don't know, when you turn 26, you can't be on your parents' health insurance anymore. And so my wife at the time was pregnant, and we needed health insurance. So I called my cousin, who's actually an officer in the Utah National Guard. And I said, hey, I'm looking at doing this. I had talked to one of my neighbors who was in the Air Guard. And I said, hey, I'm looking at what do you think? And he was just like, dude, the health insurance benefits alone are worth your 1 weekend a month. And so I said, cool, that's enough for me. And so it kind of went back and forth between the Air Guard and the Army Guard. But when I was talking to my cousin, he's like, look, you do what's best for you and your family. But if you join the Air Guard, I'm going to have to, get after you a little bit. But during high school, I almost joined active duty Army. Got scarily close to signing with the Marines, but obviously didn't end up pulling the trigger. but I knew deep down the Army was where I wanted to be. So, I ended up joining when I was 26 years old. I had tried to go to the old CUNA storefront to find out that it had just been closed down, and the Meridian storefront had just opened. And that's where I met Sergeant Avalos. Spoke to him, got all the way through the process with him, and then Sergeant Castro had actually just gotten back from recruiting school. So all he had to do was take me to MEPS to enlist. So, yeah, it was his first enlistment. So that's
First enlistment.
Wow.
first enlistment.
That's
I did
cool.
not know that.
Yeah, and but that day when I went to MEPS to do the physical, I had gone through the physical and done everything, hearing, eyesight, all that good stuff. Got all the way done to find out that I was red-green colorblind. And so my top 3 jobs I was instantly disqualified for because I was red-green colorblind. So they were like, hey, we have a medic slot available, because ultimately I just wanted to come back with something that would benefit me on the civilian side. I wanted to be able to have some sort of skill that I could use and get a job when I got back. So my first choice was 25 Bravo, which is an information technology specialist, and we were working with computers. I figured IT is not going anywhere, and
That's fair.
I could probably have a job doing that. So it was that, radiology, and pharmacy tech. And so I was disqualified for all 3. Joe Lammers at the time was the green suitor up there, and he said, look, we've got a medic slot available. You get your EMT license out of it, and you could potentially use that when you get back. And I said, cool, I just want in, so let's do it. And I'm sure Castro was crossing his fingers when he was up there hoping that I'd pick something, but I knew I wanted to get in, and didn't really matter what it was. But medic ended up being a great choice, and it afforded me a lot of opportunities early on in my career.
So Joe Lammers resold you at MEPS.
Yeah. Yep. And he didn't have to say much.
Joe, if you're listening, I'm impressed, buddy.
Yeah. So he didn't have to say much. Just, hey, we have this slot. Do you want it? And it's, yep, I want in. So it was pretty easy. So I joined. I went through our recruit sustainment program for 6 months. So that 1 weekend a month of training and getting paid before I shipped off to basic training. Not knowing that my wife at the time was due with my son. I left in April of 2016, and she had my son in May of 2016. So wow. I was at basic training when my son was born. I remember we were out doing daytime land navigation, and my drill sergeant calls me over, and she's like, hey, congratulations. And I was like, on what? And she's like, well, you're a dad. And I was like, that's a really awesome way to find that out. But she said, when we get back, you can call and make sure that everything's okay, and we'll let you touch base. So got to talk to them for a few minutes, make sure everything was okay. And then, they ended up coming out for family day and graduation. I got to meet my son when he was about 5 or 6 weeks old. But then I still had 4 months of medic school to go through. So got home when he was about 5 months old. But I didn't miss, walking, talking, crawling, all that good stuff. So yeah, so it was a blessing in disguise, because I was on active duty health insurance, and I didn't have to pay a dime for him to be born. So
that's amazing.
That the whole reason I joined paid off, even at basic training. So,
and you left medic school with an EMT license, correct?
Yes. Yep. Had my EMT license. So if I had, if I needed to, I could have worked on an ambulance here in the Valley. I think there's a test that you have to take in order to be able to do that with the Army certifications, but it would have been an easy transition. I was, fortunate enough to get back and get put on full-time orders with recruiting. So while I was in my medical unit, I was also in recruiting, helping out with the recruit sustainment drills every weekend, being the medic and helping out. And at the time, now retired First Sergeant Butler was like, hey, when you get your sergeant, you're going to come be a recruiter for me. And I was like, yeah, whatever. There's no way. But sure enough, the day I got promoted at Charlie Med, they were like, okay, you're pulled and you're out on the streets. Here's your keys. Here's your computer. Go bring people to the guard. So, wow. And that was like 6 years ago now. So yep. It's been an awesome ride to say the least.
How many of you qualified for EMT?
At the school?
Yeah, out of your company.
So that's a good question. So, when you first start, the first 8 weeks of that 16-week course, I think it's a little bit longer now, but the first 8 weeks, your head is in a book that's like 4 inches thick. And every week you're going through that book with instructors that are either previously paramedics or in the medic world in some realm within the military. I think we had an Air Force PJ at one point, and he was one of our main instructors. But that's their job, is to get you through that book, and you have to take, I think it was about 2 tests a week on different chapters of that book to make sure that we retain the information. I don't know that we retained it, but we retained it long enough to pass the test. So you go through those couple of tests, and as long as if you failed one or twice, then you got recycled. So you went back 2 weeks and had to start over with the group that was behind you. So that was very stressful during that time, because I was like, I don't want to be away from home any longer than I already have been, or I'm going to be. So every week, twice a week, I was worried that I was going to have to stay for another 2 weeks. But I made it all the way through all the tests, didn't fail one even once. And then at the very end, you take the National Registry EMT exam. Everybody takes it. It's on a computer. You don't know if you passed or failed after you get done. They wait until everybody's done, and then we all went back to our classrooms, and they read off by last names who had passed. So our instructors are going down the list of people that passed, and as he was reading names, there was groups of names that I was like, okay, like if this guy passed, then I definitely passed. And sure enough, I passed on the first time, but they give you 3 chances to pass. So if you don't pass it the first time, you can take it a second. And if you don't pass it the second, you can take it a third. If you didn't pass it the third time, which by that point we were 12 weeks into our course, we moved on to the whiskey phase of medic school, which is just kind of learning the Army's way of patching people up. And by week 12, one of my good buddies from basic training had gotten to that 3rd try, and he barely passed on that 3rd try. So it was a big day for him. But if you didn't pass that 3rd time, you got reclassed, and you had to choose a different job, and you got shipped off to another base to go through a different job
all
training.
over.
Yeah. So kind of crazy, but you have to have that EMT license to be able to perform the job. So
That's true.
So I would say a good probably at least 85, 90% of us made it through and got our NREMT. But I tell people all the time when they're looking into the 68 whiskey job or the healthcare specialist job, that first 8 weeks is going to be stressful, but just study, and make sure that you can pass that NREMT. Because if you don't, then you're going to have to go do a different job. So,
oh man,
yeah, it's very stressful.
Can you pick whatever job you want after that, or
I don't recall it being much of a choice.
Okay.
I think they gave them. That. Yeah, I think they, particularly for those that were National Guard, they kind of got some options of what was available in their state. But if you were active duty, I don't think they gave you much of a choice. They said, hey, this is what you're going to go do. So, and then when they got their duty assignments as we were getting ready to graduate and go home, there were a few that I'm sure probably would have gone somewhere else had they gotten the actual NREMT knocked out. But yeah, that was my first experience, hearing of people going to their duty stations, whether it was Korea or Germany or Italy or whatever. But then I remember the platoon sergeants bringing up Fort Polk, Louisiana, and all of the other platoon sergeants just laughed. And so
I would too. I'm not going to lie.
Worthy.
I now know that it's called the armpit of America for a reason. So I was glad that I was coming back home to Idaho. So.
What do you think your greatest accomplishment is to date?
I'm not sure. I've done some cool things throughout my life as well as in the military. I really enjoyed air assault school when I went through that probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years ago now. But that was a super fun school for me because I got to go with like 18 people from Idaho. So all of us just kind of grouped together, and everything that we were doing during air assault, I mean, it's only a 10-day course, but rather rigorous. And but we just helped each other through everything, all the tests, all the 6-mile ruck march, the 12-mile ruck march. We all just did it together. And so it was a very good bonding experience with those individuals that I went with. So I would say, in my life, I don't know. I think I put it on my sheet, but I'm still young. I think the best is still yet to come in both my life and in my military career. So I think there's still some good stuff to come.
if you could go and give advice to high school students who are stressed about their future, what would you say to them?
So from a recruiter aspect, it would definitely be to join the National Guard.
Of course.
When I joined, like I said, I was 26 years old. I have 4 other brothers, to make sure I counted that right. Yeah, 4 brothers, 2 sisters, but 2 of my other brothers actually joined shortly after I joined. So one had just gotten out of high school. He got himself into a little bit of trouble, so he had to wait for the legal stuff to close. But then he joined, I think he was about 18. And then I had another younger brother that joined when he was a junior in high school. So he used our split option program and went to basic training after his junior year, came back, did his drill weekends through his senior year, and then went to his job training after he graduated high school. So I would definitely say, if you're qualified and you're looking at the military, or, you want to go to college or a trade school, the National Guard is Army National Guard, to be specific, is definitely the way to go. But outside of that, there's a lot of kids nowadays, especially being in the high schools as much as I am, that I see that kind of just don't have that drive to succeed. Push them to just put as much effort as you can into everything. I know high school seems like kind of a mundane pursuit, but at a minimum, you've got to have a high school diploma for anything nowadays. And even now, a college degree will only get you so far. So I think you have to just find a direction, find a way that you want to go and stick to it. And that doesn't mean it can't change, but, start with something and go from there, and just give it everything you've got.
And you and I were talking earlier about a program that will actually help students who want to join pass the ASVAB, correct?
Yeah, so it actually is for individuals who are outside of high school, so they don't have the responsibility to finish their high school diploma and graduate. But if they get a lower score on the ASVAB, they can go to a training environment and get paid, and they can study to retake the ASVAB and then qualify for jobs if they didn't qualify previously. So fairly recent and new program that we have, but it's awesome. And I think it affords these people who haven't had the best luck with the ASVAB to be able to still serve and have that opportunity to get a better job that they may not have gotten had they stayed here and tried to study on their own, or have us help them. I mean, God forbid I help somebody. I wouldn't want to put that on them. So, but yeah, super awesome opportunity that we get to utilize for some of these individuals who struggle to pass the ASVAB, whether it's, just straight up they don't know the information, or they test anxiety, or whatever it might be. It gives them another opportunity to improve that score and get a better job based on that.
If I'm not mistaken, they test you like every Friday.
Yeah, and that's what I recall is, Monday through Friday you're studying, and then Friday you're taking that test. And, if you pass and there's a job that you want based on the score, then cool, you're going to basic training the next week. So, and I mean, the fact that you get to be there and get paid is incredible to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no
you're on
kidding.
active duty orders, you have the health insurance benefits, you have the pay.
And you have the help you need to pass.
100%.
That's so great.
You've got people who know what's going to be on the ASVAB, and you're specifically studying and preparing for that. So it's awesome. I think it's a really cool program that is now available, and I hope it continues to be.
Final question.
Final question.
Probably the most important, really.
Super important.
Is Sasquatch real?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
100%. Yeah. I think so I talked about that summer that I worked in California. I think on the drive back, I ended up trying to come home early so I could surprise my parents. One night, I was also trying to get to a concert that one of my favorite bands was playing. So, but that's besides the point. But driving through, I mean, I saw him out there.
Yeah.
So just run along. So, yeah, he's definitely out there.
Nice. Well, we are out of time for today. Join us next Wednesday for another episode of GI and a Cup of Joe.
As we said in the beginning of the podcast, please dress right dress and enjoy your week.